Space Force's comprehensive strategy document has just been released. Human-looking extraterrestrials are primarily benevolent according to multiple sources. US Army upgrades its mobile laser systems from 100 kilowatt to 300 kilowatts, but classified systems have been much more powerful in shooting down UFOs. US Space Force memo warns Guardians about the use of AI. Extraterrestrials mimicking human leaders is more than an intriguing hypothesis. Tall, luminous beings continue to be sighted and shot at in the Peruvian Amazon region. Ancient pyramids are interstellar communication devices, according to the discoverer of the Bosnian Pyramids. And another government official comes forward to claim that the US government is in possession of a crashed alien spacecraft.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to another edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. Now, the background is different to my normal set. That's because I'm in a hotel room, and this is the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference that I'm attending in Orlando, Florida, that began on October 20. And so you're hearing this on the morning of October 21st, just before I'm to go out on stage before the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection to give my presentation. So quite a lot has happened over the last week. So let's bring up my Twitter feed and I will go over the stories. So Space Force's comprehensive strategy document has just been released, and Space Force has three primary goals. It describes these as lines of effort, and the three goals are to win any war in space. Clearly, any military service would want to do that. Second goal is to develop a set of guardian values, your esprit de corps, and finally, work with allies to defeat enemies in space. So that kind of like really opens up a key aspect of how Space Force has been set up and what its ultimate goal is. That it really is wanting to collaborate with its allies to create a peaceful or to assert its kind of military vision in space. Now, when we consider who are the allies of Space Force, what we think about automatically are nation states with their own unique space forces like Germany, France, Australia, United Kingdom, and so forth. But allies also includes what we know has been secretly happening, which is that organizations such as the Galactic Federation of Worlds, the Ashtar Command, have been working with the US Space Force behind the scenes, and they're collaborating in setting up a disclosure plan. So this comprehensive strategy document, I think what it does is it is setting up the foundation for a Star Trek future. So that comprehensive strategy document, you can take a look at that. Here's the link for that. Again, just go to my Twitter feed, twitter.com/Michael Salla, and you'll get the references to all of these documents. Okay, so here's a story that I put out in response, or a tweet I put out in response to one of the Twitter feeds, the one, and he put out a very interesting comment associated with human-looking extraterrestrial cases. Now, he has mentioned that according to a book authored by Moira McGee called The Alien Gene, she's an Australian author, that most human-looking, non-human intelligences are primarily benevolent. Now, what I think is very helpful is that this particular article, this book actually outlines some very useful qualities. And so let's go through those qualities of benevolent, human-looking extraterrestrials. So first, most humanoid cases invite contact rather than force abductions. So that's a clear distinction between extraterrestrials involved in the abduction phenomenon and those involved in contact cases, that human-looking extraterrestrials require consent to be able to contact or interact with humans, as opposed to the grey aliens who violate human free will. Second, humanoids do not usually appear in bedrooms or manifest through walls. They require the contact to be outside a building. So what the human-looking extraterrestrials do is that they make contact in a way where individuals do not feel threatened in any way. I mean, someone just suddenly appears in your bedroom or walks through the wall, I mean, that's going to give you an emotional shock. Whereas if you see someone outside, then that's not going to shock you, because that's how you normally see people outside, or knocking at your door or whatever. So human-looking extraterrestrials do not kind of like come in a way that immediately breaks our normal expectations with making physical contact with others. Third, witnesses frequently call human-looking contact, while other so witnesses can remember their contacts with humans often. Not always, but mostly that's what happens. While the grey extraterrestrials block memories in the witness's mind. Now, there are some exceptions to that, clearly, but still, I think that's an important difference to keep in mind. The human-looking ETs stress and respect free will in humans. Other species insist that they have a right to violate our bodies and basic rights. And and this is where you get this difference between kind of like overt consent, conscious consent, versus unconscious or subconscious consent. Often a lot of abduction researchers who are supportive of the grey extraterrestrials say that people who go through abductions give, at a subconscious level, they invite contact. And there's a book by Lisa Royale that I remember coming out in the early 2000s, where she talked about that. And she's, in her view, that was okay, that humans would give it a subconscious approval, and I think that is something that we can kind of look as a big distinction between grey aliens or reptilians or insectoids involved in abductions, that make a case that, well, at a subconscious level, you're giving us approval to intervene and abduct you and violate you. Whereas the human-looking extraterrestrials are saying, no, we're not going to do any of that. It's got to be conscious, voluntary consent. So I think most of us would agree with that, but still good to know how it is that some researchers justify abductions as okay, because at a subconscious level, you've given approval. 5, while humanoids impart information, they rarely dominate the mind of contactees. So I think a good one. And 6, they can communicate telepathically. So while the greys, insectoids, communicate primarily telepathically, the human-looking extraterrestrials often take the effort to learn how to speak your language and communicate verbally, and that's a pretty important difference, because I mean that shows a sign of respect. I mean, if beings involved in contact experiences, that they would show you a sign of respect, just as you're going into a foreign country. If you speak to foreigners in that country using your own language and expect them to understand you and communicate that way, it can be disrespectful. I mean, you go into a country like France and you start speaking in English to educated Frenchmen. They probably understand you, but if you start speaking automatically in English to them, they will kind of like view that as a sign of disrespect. So I think human-looking extraterrestrials going to the effort to learn human languages to communicate shows a sign of respect, whereas greys and insectoids that just come in, communicate their normal way, I mean, they're showing zero respect for humanity. Now, what I found very interesting about this list of qualities is that, and I responded, was that it makes the case that human-looking extraterrestrials are friendly to humanity, and certainly a lot of contactees have been making that case. But there was a leaked document that I discussed in one of my articles on exopolitics.org, and that article, here we go. It came out in June 2017. And it discussed this new majestic document that had just come out that described 4 different categories of extraterrestrial visitors. And it described the top 2 categories were the humans. And I think it actually has this here. Here we go. Yeah, here it is. So this document, this leaked Defense Intelligence Agency document that came out, that was leaked in 2017, is based on a 1989 briefing document to an incoming member of Majestic 12. And if you want to find out more about that, I recommend going to exopolitics.org to learn about it. But it describes 4 basic types of extraterrestrial biological entities, and they were listed in terms of their influence on our planet. And so the Earth-like humanoids, it said that there are several variations more or less like ourselves. The majority of these are friendly and are the bulk of our EBE contacts. Most have a high degree of psychic ability and all use science and engineering of an advanced nature. So that clearly makes the case that the human-looking extraterrestrials are the most friendly. And they make up the majority of EBE contacts, which was very interesting because this is the first leaked Majestic 12 document that actually discusses these human-looking extraterrestrials making contact. And it goes on to describe other ETs, but I'm not going to talk about that now. Already mentioned the greys and the insectoids. So you can go to this article to learn more about that briefing document. So now let's go back to the Twitter feed. So here we go. This is a release, or it's an article about a new mobile laser system developed by Lockheed Martin, and it has increased its power outage from, or the power that it can reach for the laser weapons that are deployed. These have been increased from 100 kilowatts to 300 kilowatts. So this is Lockheed Martin has developed this mobile laser system. So a 300 kilowatt laser that's being used by the Army is certainly, here we go. Let's have a look at it. I think there's some pictures of that. There's how it looks. Okay, so that's a diagram of this mobile laser system that has been developed by Lockheed Martin for the US Army, and its wattage has increased from 100 kilowatts to 300 kilowatts, so it can shoot down objects. So this is important to keep in mind, that this is a unclassified system, or at least it's been released into the open source scientific literature. Lockheed Martin, of course, will have proprietary control over the actual technology, but I think it's worth mentioning that this is a weapon system that has been in use for many decades beforehand. So when it comes to classified laser weapon systems, we know that there's much more powerful systems that have been around for decades that this mobile system that Lockheed has developed for the US Army pales in comparison with what's been around for decades. And we can prove that by this STS-48 UFO incident that happened in 1991. And here, this was an actual incident, and you can just click on the link here in my tweet to watch the whole thing, where you can actually see a UFO flying in space that was being recorded by the space shuttle. And then there appeared to be a directed energy weapon, a laser of some kind, being shot at it, and the UFO had to take evasive action. So that was from 1991. So, that tells us that there have been powerful laser directed energy weapons in existence since the early 1990s, and that these have been used against UFOs. So that is well worth keeping in mind when we're trying to understand what is being released into the public arena by aerospace companies concerning these exotic weapon systems that are kind of finally being released after having first been used and developed in classified programs decades earlier. Okay, so here's a story that came out in the debrief. And in this story, it's a US Space Force internal memo warns guardians of strategic pause in the use of generative AI. So the United States Space Force has instructed its servicemen and women, guardians, that's the official term for them, about the use of generative AI. They're just saying keep away from AI for the time being. There's a strategic pause in that. And that's interesting because I first heard about the dangers of AI as far as space programs are concerned from the Italian Amicizia case from 1956 to 1978. And contactees who have reported about the human-looking extraterrestrials involved in that, they say that there were these synthetic extraterrestrials in a war with the human-looking extraterrestrials. And all of this was fictionalized in the Battlestar Galactica series. And that was a form of soft disclosure by the US Navy. And I actually have discussed this in several of my books, especially Space Force, Our Star Trek Future, where I laid out exactly how it is that the Navy wanted to move forward with soft disclosure of not only its secret space program and positive human-looking extraterrestrials, but also of a synthetic or artificial intelligence that was a danger to humanity. And that was fictionalized in Battlestar Galactica series through the one of the people involved in the production of that was Leslie Stevens IV. He actually wrote the pilot episode, and he really was a key player in helping develop this idea for Battlestar Galactica. And his role was that he was the son of the Navy Vice Admiral in charge of naval intelligence and also the Navy's secret space program. So Leslie Stevens IV, he was a key player, one of the people involved in the launch of the Battlestar Galactica series and the dangers being posed by AI. So I think there is definitely an awareness within the US military, especially those involved in the secret space programs, that AI are a long-term strategic threat. And so you want to start early in terms of making sure there are limits, you take safeguards to prevent AI infiltrating or taking over communication systems, weapon systems, information systems this is actually a long-term strategic threat. Okay, so let's move on. Here's something that I thought was very interesting. It was a tweet from Tom Thompson, and he was putting forth this intriguing hypothesis, as he called it, and he described chemical mimicry, and that's a phenomenon observed in the insect world that involves the ability of certain predators to imitate the specific chemical system signals, thereby deceiving their prey and avoiding triggering a defensive response. For instance, he gives the example of a wax moth caterpillar, which emits a chemical signal that allows it to enter a beehive without arousing alarm. So once inside, it carries out its activities, eating wax and bee larvae, and the bees are oblivious to all of this because the caterpillar is imitating the chemicals, the odors that the bees expect. So if we now apply that into the realm of UFOs, extraterrestrial contact, so in the realm of UFO law, there are claims of non-human intelligence, NHI, that resemble humans in appearance. Now, and so this is the speculation, according to the person making this tweet. Imagine if these entities possess the technological capability to grant themselves top secret clearance of a level so elevated that no one within the military or government could even investigate them. He goes on, with such high-level clearances, they could infiltrate any facility, confiscate any video evidence, and warn military and government personnel with statements like, this is classified at the highest level, you can disclose it, if you ever disclose this incident or mention our presence, you will face charges of treason, and so forth. So, very interesting hypothesis. Now, what I found fascinating about this was that this was precisely what Command Sergeant Major Robert Dean was saying back in 1964, NATO had completed a cosmic top secret report called the Assessment, where it described the ability of these human-looking extraterrestrials to infiltrate military and political institutions, and how that caused NATO leaders this huge headache. Like, how do you protect yourself against this? How do you protect against these humans that can just fit in so easily into the military system and do things along the lines of what was speculated by this tweet by Tom Thompson, that they could just use their technology to imitate top secret clearances, give themselves all kinds of access to classified programs, and of course imitate or pretend to be someone that they're not. So definitely it's much more than just an intriguing hypothesis. I think this has been going on for a long time, and certainly there have been people like William Tompkins, a US Navy whistleblower or insider, who worked for various aerospace corporations for decades, and he said that he came across these humans who had infiltrated these major corporations and were sharing intelligence and reading people's minds and being able to kind of influence things behind the scenes. So this is really a fascinating phenomenon, and yeah, we need to be aware of that. Okay, so here's another story about these tall, luminous floating beings that appeared in the Peruvian Amazon region. There continue to be reports about these beings being seen and shot at, and they're shot at point blank range and not affected. Now, of course, there have been claims that these are miners in wearing some kind of jetpack. Well, a miner in a jetpack, sure, they can imitate a being that's floating around, but they're not going to be able to take shots at point blank range and not be affected. And what happened here was that the being, after it was shot at point blank, it uses a laser device to render the shooter unconscious. So this is another story, a tweet that you can take a look at. Okay, so here's a story, an article, an actual interview I did with Dr. Sam Osmanagic, who is the discoverer of the Bosnian Pyramids. So this is an interview you can watch. Just go to exopolitics.org. There's various platforms, YouTube. There's also Rumble, Odyssey, Apple. You can watch the Spotify, the podcast version. And what he discusses is that the pyramids that were discovered in Bosnia, that he studied these and he found that there was a very large energy being transmitted out of the apex. And he thought that this was a scalar energy beam and that it's actually a communication device. And he makes the point that scalar weapons or longitudinal waves, gravitational waves are longitudinal, and apparently these travel faster than light. So he makes the case that the pyramids are, one of their functions is to act as communication devices. And also he had other very interesting explanations for what pyramids do, that they are also healing devices. You can go in there and you can be healed of various ailments, that they influence DNA. So this is very interesting in terms of this ability for pyramids to heal, rectify DNA, change DNA to extend one's life. And that is certainly one of the preoccupations of the ancient Egyptians, that they wanted to extend their life. They were looking for human immortality. And not just Egyptians. We can see in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest epic from Sumeria, it was also about the quest for immortality. So pyramids do have this ability to be able to extend life. So he discusses these, and what was probably the most fascinating part of our interview was that Dr. Osmanagic, he has found different artifacts from around the world that show evidence of these ancient beings that kind of look like in the Predator series or the Alien series. They look like the aliens in those series in battle, and that shows that these different reptilian and insectoid races that at some point in human history were dominant on the surface of the planet have still maintained a presence and have experienced various battles, and that's reflected in various artifacts that can be found around the world. So a fascinating interview with Dr. Osmanagic. Okay, so there's another government official who's come forward to claim that a craft of unknown origin, a UFO, has been recovered and it's in the government's possession. So he says that he, witnessed or is aware of the crashed UFO. There's some kind of confusion over whether he actually saw it as opposed to has become aware of it through some other mechanism. But he is someone that has come forward. He was discussed in an interview in this Liberation Times article. So here you have Liberation Times, and it discusses an interview with this scientist, Dr. James Lacastski, on weaponized, and he kind of gives a very convoluted, confusing account of what he knows about these captured UFOs, and he's hedging his bets. And there's a lot of criticism about him, but what he's clearly trying to do, I think, is to kind of make sure that he doesn't violate any non-disclosure agreement that he signed, and also he doesn't want to give away too much, because he, I think, clearly wants people to check out his book, or his co-authored book that has just come out. But it is still significant that another government witness has come forward to lend his name to the growing list of those saying that the US government does have in its possession a captured flying, or a captured UFO that was that's non-human in origin. So here's the book that he has co-authored along with Colm Kelher, and this book is something that intends to set the record straight as far as the ATIP program is concerned. The ATIP program, called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, that became known in 2017 because of a New York Times article that was published, where Luis Elizondo's role in heading the ATIP program was put out as kind of like a very important development as far as studies of UFOs or UAPs are concerned, and that there was a certain amount of money that the ATIP program was given. And what this new book tries to do is to say, well, actually, the money did not go to ATIP. ATIP was actually came in at the end of what was really happening, which was that there was this other organization, which was the predecessor of ATIP. The ATIP was actually a much smaller program. That it was this program called AAWSAP, and that's Advanced Aerospace Weapons Applications. I can't remember the full acronym, and that was formed in 2000, and that was funded by the US Congress in 2008 to the tune of $22 million. And because of that, a team of scientists were convened to study various aspects of UFOs. Apparently, the big picture is that the Bigelow Aerospace Corporation got its hands on a captured UFO, or artifacts from a captured UFO. And so the scientists were kind of like looking at this and trying to come up with some theories for how this operates. So this was funded by the US Congress. Harry Reid played a role in coming up with $22 million that went to his friend, Robert Bigelow, who was or still is the head of the Bigelow Aerospace Corporation. That was what was given the contract to manage this AAWSAP program, to study or come up with explanations and theories for how these UFOs could operate. So there were 38 unclassified defense intelligence reference study papers. So these papers, they're called DIRDs, the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, that they covered various aspects of how UFOs could operate in terms of their propulsion systems, navigation systems, the metallurgy, anti-gravity, a variety of topics. So these 38 unclassified studies were restricted. So even though they were unclassified, they weren't made publicly available. But eventually they were leaked. And the first document was actually leaked by a former colleague that put that out. And since that time, more of these documents have been leaked or officially released through the FOIA program. So he's wanting to set this the record straight on all of this. So what's the big picture here? Why is this book coming out? And I think, yeah, as I said, to set the record straight in terms of what happened when and what was the correct sequence. But the question I have is, why was it that $22 million was provided back in 2008 to fund multiple scientific studies on how a UFO could operate, that was based on whatever retrieved artifacts or remains from a UFO that was in the possession of the Bigelow Aerospace Company at that time? Well, I think when we're looking at this, we need to keep in mind $22 million for a bunch of scientists to come up with theories about how UFOs could work versus the reality that billions and actually trillions of dollars over the course of years have gone into funding secret space programs where you have functional, reverse engineered flying saucers, flying rectangles, flying triangles. You're having cigar-shaped craft that are space carriers that are part of the Solar Warden that went operational in the kind of like late 1970s. And so reverse engineering of UFOs has been happening since the 1940s. There has been incredible success, and alien reproduction vehicles have been developed, going all the way back to the 1950s and 60s, that these initial pilot programs for reverse engineering and building functional flying saucers and flying triangles and so forth date back to that era. So why would Congress fund this study to do scientists involved in a kind of white world doing unclassified study of UFO capabilities? Why were they doing that in 2008? I think the best explanation is that was part of a limited hangout. That back in 2008, it was desired that there would be information that would go into the public arena that, yes, we actually have captured extraterrestrial spacecraft in our possession, but these technologies are just too hard to understand and reverse engineer. And so we're getting the best scientists to study these and come up with theories for how these might work so that we could eventually maybe come up with similar technologies ourselves, which is a lie, of course. But nevertheless, I think that is the limited hangout. And it's very interesting how this book, along with the kind of revelations by different whistleblowers, including David Grush and people, investigative reporters like Michael Schellenberger. He's spoken to, he's mentioned 30 insiders. We go to Bob Lazar. He's also talked about these unsuccessful reverse engineering efforts. So what we're getting is that we're getting a lot of these insiders, whistleblowers, coming forward telling us that these captured extraterrestrial spacecraft have not been reverse engineered. They're just too difficult. So what we're seeing up there are clearly alien, that these are or possibly belonging to China or Russia, some peer adversary, and that would actually make it even worse. And that's why we need to come up with much more funding so that there can be more studies, there can be more weapon systems developed, because whoever's flying these things are a threat. Even though, as I have shown in my research, and there are many others, that a lot of these craft that are seen are actually reverse engineered spacecraft that belong to the US Space Command or belong to the US Navy's Solar Warden, and the other nations are collaborating in this. But that's not the narrative that is being put out. that what we are witnessing now, slowly coming out through the public arena, many news stories, is that these are technologies that have not been reverse engineered at all, that what we're seeing are some foreign adversary, whether it's Russia, China, or extraterrestrial, and so the US needs to have more funding to deal with that unknown threat and just focus on the unknown. Okay, so here's something that is very interesting, that one of the members of Congress that sat in the July 26 hearing involving David Grush and others, and is also part of this UFO caucus that has been set up in Congress, she was told, this is Anna Paulina Luna, that she was told that that there would be a classified UAP briefing regarding the testimony of David Grush and others with the Inspector Generals. So that was something that she kind of put out on October 17. That this is telling us that there is going to be a hearing in a classified facility called a SCIF, where the Inspector Generals of the intelligence community and the Department of Defense are going to come forward, and they're going to be talking about what they know or what they have been told by different whistleblowers about these classified reverse engineering programs. So more on that shortly. So here's something, is that the new report by the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, on UFOs has just been released, and that covers the period from August 2022 to April 2023. So that brings the total number of cases to just over 800. Now, what's interesting is that it comes up with a table. Let me kind of like bring that table up because I think it's very relevant. So here's a statement by the Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General on the report, where he discusses the report, and I think the report is here. So just follow these links. Starting with my Twitter feed, you could follow the links and you can go see the report. So here's the actual report. It's unclassified. There was a classified version that goes to members of Congress that have the classification to read that. So I'm assuming people like Congress Anna Luna, she would, as a member of Congress, she presumably would be cleared to read the unclassified, or to read the classified version. So here's the unclassified version. So this is very interesting. It says here's the table, reported UAP morphologies. So it says, okay, so half of the UAPs or UFOs, they don't know what shape it has. Okay, but of the other half, the 50% or whatever it is, 49%, that they do know that some are kind of like maybe a triangle shaped, saucer shaped, rectangle shaped, that the majority are they are the orb shaped UFOs. So the majority of UFO sightings that are, in terms of whose shape is recognized, are orbs. And that's very interesting because I have been putting out information, whether in webinars or my recent books, that these orbs are being released by motherships, extraterrestrial motherships, or by space arcs, and that they are performing different functions, like monitoring human consciousness, and that even trying to identify the crew of the space arcs. And so they're definitely, these orbs are monitoring humanity. And this new AARO report is saying that, yes, these orbs are the objects that the known morphologies, that they are the ones that are in the majority. And so, yeah, this is a big concern for the Pentagon, trying to understand exactly what these orbs are up to and considering them as some kind of national security threat. This Pentagon press statement emphasizes the national security threat posed by UFOs, orbs. So, this is just building the narrative that UFOs are unknown. We don't know who they are. They are definitely not reverse engineered spacecraft that are in the possession of the US military. That's the narrative that is being pushed out there, that they are unknown. And of course, I've already said that that's BS, that they are known. Okay, so here's we did on Thursday, on October 19th, Thursday, I released the interview or the presentation Alex Collier did at the 2010 Earth Transformation Conference on the Big Island. And his topic is that he covered then is especially relevant today, the Andromedans and mentoring humanity. And I think he's very prescient in terms of what happens when humanity realizes that we are part of a big galactic presence, or that there's a galactic community out there, and that we are a new member, or we want to join that. What do we do as a civilization as the truth emerges about different extraterrestrial civilizations that are in existence, that have functional organizations out there? How do we deal with that? And he was making the case about the role of extraterrestrials such as the Andromedans in mentoring humanity. And I think that is especially relevant today, that's where we need to go as a civilization, down this path of full disclosure of extraterrestrials, the technologies they've shared with us that have been reverse engineered, and we need to be mentored rather than it all happening in a way where secrecy dominates, the public is kept out of the loop, and all the major decisions are made by committees that are unknown, without elected representatives playing any kind of critical role. Okay, so here's the final tweet for this week in review, and that is Representative Tim Burchett comes up. He has actually given the dates for when it is that the members of Congress interested in the UFO issue, so that'll include this UFO caucus, that includes people like Representative Luna, Representative Matt Gaetz, Tim Burchett, and I think Gallagher, Representative Gallagher is another one, that they are going to be allowed to go into a sensitive compartment information facility, that's a SCIF, and hear from the Inspector Generals of the Pentagon and of the intelligence community about what is known about these classified UFOs or these non-human intelligence craft that have been retrieved. So those hearings are going to be held on October 26th, November 16th, and it'll be very interesting to see how much of the information these representatives gain through those classified hearings that they're then going to be able to reveal in an unclassified way through Congress. I suspect they'll be able to talk about quite a bit of it. Representative Tim Burchett has made it very clear that he's no big fan of secrecy. As far as he's concerned, it's best to just reveal the whole thing. So if he's told what's really happening, and I suspect what he'll be told in these classified hearings by the Inspector General is that, yes, we've received information from credible witnesses, firsthand whistleblowers, that, yes, craft of non-human intelligence have been recovered, they're being studied, and that these studies have so far been unsuccessful, that they'll probably hear that, and Representative Burchett and the others will be able to come forward and I think share a lot of that, but it's going to be a limited hangout. We're going to be told that the craft that have been recovered are non-human in origin, but they are too difficult to reverse engineer. So that doesn't give us an answer as to what these UFOs are that are being kind of increasingly sighted around the skies, and I think that's setting up for something to come. But yeah, so we're in the process of a slow but steady disclosure. It is underway. It is, to my mind, irreversible. In addition to this, you have the UAP Disclosure Act for 2023 that's winding its way through Congress, and that's going to be passed. So I think what we're going to have is disclosure, but it's going to be this limited hangout. UFOs are real. Some of them, some of these UFOs are non-human in origins. Some of the UFOs that have been captured have been studied. They've been unsuccessfly studied in terms of R&D, so there are no reverse engineered craft flying around up there, but they could be Russian, could be Chinese, could be extraterrestrials, we don't know, but throw us a lot more money so that we can fund Space Force and we can fund the Air Force and to deal with this unknown UFO threat, which, as you all know by now, is actually a lie. We know exactly what they are. They are, the majority of these are reverse engineered alien reproduction vehicles that have been designed and used in multiple space programs, and in my recent books involving JP, he's been on several of these craft. He's an eyewitness. He's actually taken photographs of these crafts, so it's not just his story and testimony. He actually has photographs of these craft, and you can see those in the books. Well, that's it for this week's Week in Review. And again, as always, please just share and like this video. It really helps with the algorithms that do shadow ban a lot of this exopolitics content. So I look forward to seeing you next week, and I will give you a report on the GSIC conference, the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference, and I'll be doing some interviews here, and I'll be talking more about that next week. So thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.